Was the worst year for a lot of us for our mental as well as physical health. So joining us this morning is best-selling author, coach Lisa Goldenthal.
Hello and welcome. I'm Lisa G, your host. You're at the top of your game, yet the game is changing faster than ever. Strategies that got you here aren't the ones that'll keep you here. The pressure is relentless, and the fear of obsolescence looms large. That's why I'm here. Welcome to the new podcast series, Disrupted: How to Be Gritty and Unlock Performance in Business, Mindset, Wellness, and Success to help you master disruption.
Thanks for coming, and I'll see you soon.
He's a veteran psychologist, longtime CEO of a multi-million-dollar consulting firm, serving Fortune 500 clients in the food industry, sold over 30 million of marketing consulting services in the course of his career. And he's been in New York Times, LA Times, Chicago Sun Times, Indiana Star. And I am most interested in your story. So first of all, welcome to the podcast. And I want to know, Glenn Livingston, your story and how you used to be, did you say 300 pounds?
I was close to 300 pounds. I stopped weighing myself at 257, but in the worst of my binge eating days, I just kept going and going, and I'd stopped exercising, and it was really bad. It was really bad. Yeah, no, I'm a psychologist from a large family of psychologists and therapists. And if something breaks in the household and you ask it how it feels, we'd be in good shape, but nobody knew how to fix it.
I love that. Me too. My mom's a psychologist.
Oh no, we got to talk.
Definitely.
We are both messed up from that experience, I'm sure.
So how did you go from the formerly obese and working in the food industry to helping people with overeating?
The long way. So I stopped working in the food industry probably about 8 or 10 years ago. Being from a family of psychologists, I thought that there must be a hole in my heart. Maybe I couldn't stop eating because I had to fill the hole in my heart, and then I wouldn't have to keep filling the hole in my stomach. And so I went through a very spiritual, emotional, depthful search, trying to figure out how I could fill that hole in my heart. I learned all sorts of things about myself, but none of them helped me to stop overeating. I'd get a little thinner and a lot fatter, and a little thinner and a lot fatter. And long story short, I flipped paradigms really in my early 40s.
Right.
Because I thought of three things. I recognized three things that were going on in our society today. And they were all external forces that had nothing to do with, my mama not loving me enough, or being in a bad marriage, or being lonely, or whatever it was. One of them was the food industry, that they were engineering these hyper palatable concentrations of starch and sugar and fat and excitotoxins and salt, and it's all designed to hit the bliss point in your reptilian brain without giving you enough nutrition to feel satisfied, right?
And yeah, you want more. It was designed to make you addicted, right?
It's designed to make you addicted. There are actually certain ways that it's designed to disable your hungry and full meters. It's I don't want to say it's evil because the market kind of wants it. But I feel a little bit like the Marlboro Man later in his life when he became contrite and felt like he was just doing the wrong thing. So I'm trying to make up for it.
I love that you were behind the scenes of the enemy camp, and then you went over to the other side, having gone through such a journey yourself. And I love your the way you're doing good now as a superhero. And why I want to talk to you now is because the statistics are out there. We've all been too close to the fridge. We need to get some help from emotional eating and all the uncertainty in today's world. Obesity was already a huge problem before the last 2.5 years. And now it's our mental health, it's our physical health. And I launched this podcast so I can help people be unstoppable. And I want you to help talk about how ending overeating is possible. Is it complicated? Is it simple? How can we help people in this unstable time?
So despite what appears to be overwhelming forces, if you're willing to consider flipping paradigms, and instead of trying to solve your emotional problems to stop overeating, learn how to sever the link between emotions and overeating. It's kind of like building a really good fireplace, so you can look at the fire if you have to, you can put it out if you want to, but the fire can't escape and burn down the house. So here's how you do that. First of all, you need to recognize that the part of the brain that responds to those hyperpalatable food substances, we didn't have chocolate bars in the savannah, 15,000 years ago, right?
Right.
The part of your brain that responds to those concentrated sources of pleasure, and you can regulate them, you don't have to give them up, but you need to understand that that's the reptilian brain. It's part of our survival response, like the feast and famine, just hand over the chocolate.
Absolutely.
And so that there are two things to know about it. One is that it doesn't know love. So all of this effort to love yourself more, it's wonderful. I want you to love yourself more. If you need a hug, I got a hug for you, but I don't think it's going to help you stop overeating. What you have to do is learn how to recognize when your reptilian brain is active, when that survival drive is going in the wrong direction. Learn how to take yourself out of survival mode, and then figure out what are the erroneous thoughts that are justifying that connection. Like, that chocolate bar at the table at Starbucks, you said you're not going to have chocolate during the week, but you worked out hard enough and you're probably not going to gain any weight, and it's just going to be one bite anyway. It'll be just as easy to start tomorrow, right? That's the kind of thinking that goes on in our head. And
exactly. The justifications.
yeah, so you have to learn how to recognize that. So I know this is a short podcast, so I'll get right into the meat of it. You need one simple rule to get started with this game. It's like a mental game that you play. One simple rule. Like, I'll never have chocolate on a weekday again. I'll only ever have chocolate on Saturdays and Sundays, right?
Yeah, the black and white thinking.
Well, see, our culture says that we shouldn't think in black and white about food, that there are no good foods or bad foods, and you should just eat well 90% of the time and indulge yourself 10% of the time.
Right.
But there's a big problem with that.
Okay.
The problem with that is that nobody tells you how to decide what's the 90% and what's the 10%. So you're constantly facing chocolate decisions if you're trying to regulate chocolate, like I do. Chocolate was my thing.
Right.
And every food decision that you make wears down your willpower.
Right.
So in the absence of having a really clear line that defines what's healthy and unhealthy for you, you're forcing yourself into a situation where you always have to be mindful and use your judgment. And there's only so much mindfulness to go around. There's only so much judgment to go around. There's only so much willpower to go around. It's kind of like gas in the tank, and it's a really good thing to use when you can.
Yeah, but when you get triggered, what's the answer?
So you need a hard and fast rule so you know when you're being triggered. Okay, then you're triggered. Now what you want to do is say, okay, my lizard brain is active for some reason. I need to slow down. I need to take myself out of emergency response mode and put myself into my upper brain. The sympathetic nervous system gets you all revved up for action. The parasympathetic nervous system slows you down and says it's time to rest and digest. You need to be able to switch nervous systems. The first thing you do is you take a 7-11 breath. I learned this from Laurie Habin. If you breathe out for longer than you breathe in for a count of 7 and out for a count of 11. I'm not going to do it now because it takes a little while. You're signaling your brain that there's no emergency. Because if you think about it, if you were being chased by a hungry bear, you'd be right?
Right. That helps, though. It's that breathing that really helps.
So if you can breathe in for a count of 7 and out for a count of 11, you're signaling your brain there's no emergency. This is a time when I can rest and digest. And you start to disable that emergency response system and start to access your rational brain again. You start to be able to work in your neocortex, which is the seat of reason and logic, but there's no time to think like that when a hungry bear is chasing you. That's the first thing you do.
Breathe.
Breathe. 7-11, breathe. Yeah. Second thing you do is ask yourself, what is my lizard brain telling me that's suggesting it's okay to break the rule that I made for myself? And I just went over a whole bunch of possible justifications you could have. Let's just take one of them. It'll be just as easy for you to start tomorrow. Come on, you worked out hard enough. Well, then you want to ask yourself, what's wrong with this justification? Usually there's a half a truth and a bigger lie. So the half truth is, I probably could start tomorrow. But the lie is it's probably not going to be one bite. The lie is also it won't be just as easy to start tomorrow, because if I have a craving and I reinforce it today, it's going to be stronger tomorrow. You always need to use the present moment to be healthy. If you're in a hole, you have to stop digging. So it's not going to be just as easy to start tomorrow. So now you've kind of taken that grease chute and you've poured sandpaper on it. Now you take another breath and you ask yourself, what do I really need? A lot of times people get these urgent cravings because they haven't fully nutrified themselves, because they didn't get enough sleep, because they're overwhelmed with input and decisions and their willpower is worn down. Sometimes they need to step out for 5 minutes and just take a breath and not answer their cell phone or talk to anybody or decide anything. Sometimes they need healthy food. One of the ways that I got myself to control chocolate was to recognize that I wanted a banana kale smoothie when I usually wanted chocolate, and it wouldn't be quite as pleasurable. I didn't quote get high with food the way I would get high with chocolate, but on the other hand, it really scratched the itch. And before I knew it, I was craving kale banana smoothies instead of the chocolate. And those are the basics of what you can do. You either feed yourself or give yourself the break, or at minimum, if you don't have time, the other part I left out, if you do this in writing, it's better than if you do it in your head, because writing is subject to the limitations of our short-term memory. And we believe that writing is an upper brain activity. So it takes you also into your rational brain and disables that emergency response system. So that's a very, very, very briefly encapsulated technique to get you to stop throwing out your best laid plans on Monday afternoon when you read a diet book on the weekend.
Okay, so you got to be in touch with your feelings of what you're feeling when you're having this craving, and you got to get into your breathing and journaling. And how do we create, is that correct?
Well, you do. You don't have to solve your feelings.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting thing about what people think about emotional eating. People think that they feel stressed, and so they're eating to quote unquote numb themselves out.
Right.
And so I kind of joke with them. I say, well, did you ever go to the dentist? And he said, I'm out of Novocaine. Is it okay if I inject you with a bagel?
I love that analogy.
So there's something more going on than just numbing out, right? It's more like we're seeking a concentrated source of pleasure to escape the current situation. And it's true that the nervous system can't quite conduct the emotions when the digestive system is overloaded. So there is an anesthetic effect. But what's also true is that if you feel anxious and then you eat something, you're training your body to produce more anxiety. Anxiety has...
Interesting.
See, anxiety has physiological correlates, like, for example, higher blood pressure. And we know from animal studies that if you take animals who are exhibiting higher blood pressure and you give them a food reward the moment they have higher blood pressure, that group of animals will have consistently higher blood pressure than a group of animals that has not been rewarded for having higher blood pressure. So we think that you're probably creating the problem that you think that you're solving. So it's not a one-way relationship. It's not a one-way relationship. Yeah.
That is so interesting that you're making the anxiety worse by the emotional eating. So let me ask you another question. How can we create a real food plan? Because I love the way you mentioned that if you're having the kale and banana smoothie, that you're starting to crave that after a while because that's your sweet thing and sweets are your thing. So any more tips for our audience that we're all struggling with anxiety and uncertainty and stress these days? How can we create a real food plan? Any suggestions there?
A big suggestion, which is to separate the need to get control from the need to lose weight. But part of what perpetuates overeating is this feast and famine roller coaster. We live in a diet culture.
Yes.
We live in an industry which says you're going to lose 30 pounds in 30 days. And
yes.
Most likely we believe that type of restriction, people are not just addicted to overeating, they're also addicted to the restriction. And if you think about it, in our evolution, if we went through a period where food was scarce, as soon as we found it, we'd have to hoard it, right?
Right. And
so you're teaching your body that you live in a feast and famine environment. No wonder you feel like someone's putting a gun to your head and say, no, have more, no, have more, no, have more. So you want to get control of that reaction first by flooding your body with nutrition at a slight caloric deficit if you want to lose weight. I'm not a I'm not a physician or a dietitian, but I've worked with thousands of binge eaters. Flood your body with nutrition at a slight caloric deficit. Look, try to lose about a pound a week at most.
Yeah.
And you start this whole thing with one simple rule. So one simple rule could be, I'll never go back for seconds, or I'll always put my fork down between bites, or I won't eat in front of a screen again, or I'll only have pretzels at Major League Baseball parks. Just take a breath and ask yourself, what's the one thing that I could do, that I could and would do? It's not a tremendous burden. It's not going to be hard to stick to, but it would make a big difference. And everybody can come up with something. Sometimes it's, I'm not going to eat after 8 o'clock at night. Whatever it is, one simple rule, and then start to play this crazy game where you ask yourself, what's my lizard brain saying to try to talk me out of this rule? And it will try to talk you out of it. Then go through the procedure that we talked about when that happens. If you make a mistake, get up and aim at the bullseye again. Ask yourself, in what direction and by how much did you miss the bullseye? And what adjustments do you need to make? Collect evidence of success rather than evidence of failure. So ask yourself, how did I manage to have 5 cupcakes instead of 15? Or, gee, I ate a whole pizza, but I didn't eat the box. What did you do right? What did you do right?
I love that, because we are so negative and hard on ourselves in this painful up and down roller coaster weight loss journey in our diet culture. So what did we do right? I love that.
Because Lisa, if you ask yourself what you did wrong, you're going to train your mind to look for what you're doing wrong, and you'll develop a failure identity. If you ask yourself what you did right, you're going to train yourself to look for evidence of success, and you'll develop a success identity, and that moves people forward.
I love, there's so many golden nuggets in this conversation. I know it's a short podcast, but just to recap, I love the part about what you did right and the 7-11 breathing. And it's so easy to remember based on 7-11. And I love that way that you can help people take one step at a time. Like, what can you do right? What's one small step? Is there any other golden nuggets you want to leave our audience with?
Well, your lizard brain will try to set the bar too high for you. You remember the nursery rhyme, when she was good, she was very, very good, but when she was bad, she was hard?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Most people live by that dictum. They try to be really, 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 really good, and then they go, F it, I'm just gonna blow it and go all the other way. And you got to get off that roller coaster. Right? So don't let your lizard brain set the bar too high. Start small. You got to go to kindergarten before you go to college, and then see if you can do that for a couple of weeks. Sometimes that's all it takes. I knew a truck driver who said, I've got to eat fast food 3 meals a day, but I'm not going to go back for seconds. That guy wound up losing 150 pounds. So sometimes that's all it takes. It usually makes a big difference, and it makes the biggest difference in eradicating the sense of despair and hopelessness and powerlessness about food, and gets people to start thinking that they can actually do this. And some people feel like it's going to take away their freedom if they lay down these rules, but it turns out that freedom sits on top of discipline. It's not opposed to discipline. So the discipline of the engineers who made your car is what empowers the steering wheel to turn the wheels exactly 30 degrees, which makes it possible for you to drive your car, which vastly expands your radius of locomotion. You can get all around town because of the discipline of those engineers. The discipline of a jazz pianist to practice all the scales and know the structure of music makes it possible for him to improvise his soul away from that structure, because he knows where the underlying structure is and he can come back to it. So you're actually building freedom, building these disciplines. And eventually they don't become like these little Nazi food policemen in your head. Eventually they just become part of your character. Like, you can become a person who doesn't eat chocolate during the week. Maybe it would be hard to say, I'll never have chocolate on the week again. But if I ask you, do you think you could ever become a person who doesn't eat chocolate during the week? You're going to say, probably I could do that, because we do that all the time. There are all types of unwritten rules we have. We never steal the tip off of the table when the waitress hasn't seen it. We don't kick old ladies in the tush. There are all types of things that we never do because of our character. Character trumps willpower. What's the kind of person that you like to be with food? That's what you need to ask yourself, and then you can dimensionalize that in these little these little training wheels, these little rules that move you in that direction and define what healthy behavior is. If you don't do that, you're putting yourself you're making yourself vulnerable to big food and big advertising and a lot of the mythology that's in our culture. It's very powerful, but it turns out there's a fairly simple solution. Just requires a little work up front.
Well, Glenn Livingston, I love the power of discipline myself. I love your steps. Where can people find more about you?
I'd love to give you a free copy of the book in Kindle, Nook, or PDF format. You can get that at neverbingeagain.com if you click the big red button. And when you do, I will give you a set of food plan starter templates, which will show you a whole bunch of sample rules adjusted to different dietary philosophies. I'll also give you a recorded set of coaching sessions so that you can hear how this works in practice. I know we're talking about a lot of principles in a very quick period of time. So neverbingeagain.com, click the big red button and sign up for the reader bonus list.
Thanks, Glenn, for being a guest on Whole CEO with Lisa G.
Thank you, Lisa. It was great.